Hey, my name is Shelly and welcome to my November wrap-up. I will be honest, I have been thinking it's been December for probably about 2 weeks now because of Christmas preparation and all that fun stuff. So I feel like I'm behind, but although I am on schedule. So November was like an okay reading month. It wasn't fantastic, it wasn't terrible. There has been better months, there have been worse months, but I did manage to read 8 books, which is pretty good. I mean, normally before I started my vlogs, I was only reading about 5 books per month. 1 book, 8 books, it's all good. So I'm gonna split this video up by genre. So we're gonna start with like adult fantasy, and then we're gonna move to YA fantasy, and then we're gonna move to romantasy. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first adult fantasy I'd like to talk about is The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. This book really doesn't need much of an introduction. A lot of people know about it, even if you're not a Sanderson fan. You heard about the Secret Projects, and this was Secret Project number 4. I don't know why it took me so long to read this. I've had it on my shelves for about a year now. So I don't know, maybe it's because I heard mixed things about it. Maybe because I heard that it was more closely related to Stormlight and I was kind of afraid to read it. So I decided to push it back to read it closer to the release date of Stormlight 5. This takes place on a completely different planet with a character named Nomad, and you actually don't know his name, and he's literally a nomad and he jumps from planet to planet. So we don't know who he is, but we know he has a connection to Stormlight. You know, say a lot of things about Sanderson, but one thing that is like you cannot argue is the fact that Sanderson makes the best worlds. Like the best worlds. I think if this book was written by a different author than Sanderson, this book would have been way more popular. But because it is a Sanderson book, and because he is known for such fantastic worlds, it wasn't hyped as much. And the other reason why I think that this book wasn't hyped as much is because it is a standalone, and it is kind of like a Western-like style where this guy comes to this town that's in trouble, or planet that's in trouble, and he uses his out-of-worldly knowledge to help them and save the day. The first thing I want to take away from is that while reading this, I realized how much I don't remember of Stormlight. There are so many Cosmere references and details in this book that I was overwhelmed by the Easter eggs and by all of the little fine details, all of the little like hints of what to come. I have a hair on me. There's a lot of hints and foreshadowing of what's going to happen in Stormlight 5. And I am terrified. Like, I am now officially scared for Stormlight 5 after reading this book. Even though it had a fantastic world building, an interesting story, I loved all of the Easter eggs, even though they made me feel very like I really need to do my homework before reading Stormlight 5. I loved all of that. I didn't really care about the story. I wasn't invested. In the beginning, I really liked Nomad, but towards the end, I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it. Like, he's got that typical Sanderson humor, if you know what I'm saying. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And in this instance, it didn't really work. So although I really loved a lot about this world and how action-packed this was, I needed more. I needed more of a character development. I needed more character interaction. I needed a little bit more reason to care about what is happening on this planet and, you know, about Nomad. I don't really want to say anything more about this book because I feel like it's more boring spoiler territory, but yes, I did not love this book. I liked it, I didn't love it. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I feel like a lot of people will be shocked by that because I probably don't think I've ever rated a Sanderson lower than 4 stars before, but here we are. There's a first time for everything. The second book I want to talk about, I've already talked about in one of my vlogs, and that is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book is really hard to give a synopsis for. It is really hard to place in a certain genre. Like, it could be sci-fi, it could be dystopian, it could be urban fantasy, it could be fantasy. Like, it is a little bit of everything, and at the same time, it doesn't know what it is. And that kind of becomes very apparent in the story. And the fact that this is the 10th edition, the 10th edited edition, so it's different from the first one, I still kind of felt like it was missing something. So I'm going to try and give a synopsis as best as I can without giving anything away. This world is kind of like an alternate history dystopian world where people with certain gifts like clairvoyancy and psychics and stuff like that are like hunted down, and they're either executed or they are enslaved or they are forced to become like enforcers and soldiers for the government. So we're following a young woman named Xian, and she is a clairvoyant, clairsentient. I can't remember what she is. She's something. She's a clairsentient. And she is like kind of working for this like underground rebel group. And she finds herself in hot water and gets basically captured and then wakes up in like a weird place. And I'm going to leave it at that because I feel like if you want to read this book, I feel like going in completely blind and not knowing what the heck's going on is your best bet, because I feel like that's a bit more enjoyable. Because I think if I told you what the actual plot would be, you'd be like, that's weird. There was a lot about this book that I absolutely loved. I loved the world building. I loved the story. The story was very fantastic, very unique. And the characters were okay. I didn't love them, but I liked them. I wasn't really invested in following them, but I liked it enough to continue on, if that makes sense. The one thing that really didn't work for me is Samantha Shan's writing. Her writing is not terrible. I just didn't really like how she formatted her sentences, how she formatted her paragraphs, and how she basically gave us the information. It didn't flow for me. And that's why I gave this book about 3.75. And unfortunately, I have decided that I will not be continuing on with the series. Unless someone changes my mind, unless people rave about the series and say, you really need to continue on. I feel like the books are so huge and they just get bigger and bigger as the series goes on. So right now I feel like I want to prioritize my reading for something that I actually really, really love. I do think this book is worth a read just to get your opinion about it, because it is a very interesting book and she does have a lovely writing style, but like I said, it just didn't work for me. So the next two books are the YA reads that I had for the month. And the first book is The Arrows of the Queen by Mercedes Lackey. I read this. This was the first book that I finished in November, and I did a little bit of a buddy read with my friends on Discord. And I will be perfectly honest, I don't really remember much about this book. And that's not a good thing. I actually had to quickly read the synopsis on the back to remember what this book was about. This book is about a young girl who is living a very unfortunate life. Like she's basically about to be sold off and married off by her family, who doesn't really care about her at all. And she kind of stumbles upon this horse that basically like adopts her, like kidnaps her kind of. So the horse is what is called a companion horse, and that means that it is a very special, a very intelligent horse. And this companion horse decides to choose this young girl as its rider. And because it does, she is now being trained to be a queen's guard. And she is specifically being trained to be the heir's guard, like the young princess's guard. So they develop a special relationship early on because they're around the same age. Okay, so the reason why I kind of don't remember this book is because it is very similar to The Green Rider. And although this book was written first, I did read Green Rider first. So the two stories kind of blended together in my head. Both are about young girls that are chosen by somebody to become a special rider, and these riders have special abilities. I feel like Green Rider is more modern fantasy. This is more like a classic fantasy feel, like kind of like Robin Hobb kind of feel, very slow burn, very whimsical writing. Besides the fact that this young girl is now coming into her own power and is being introduced to a new world, there's not much that happens in this story because it's mostly about her life. And I think there is even a time skip, so it starts when she's really young and then she's a teenager by the end. So a lot happens in these little pages, and yet at the same time, not a lot happens in the pages. There is definitely a reason why this series is beloved and why Mercedes Lackey is such a famous author. But for my enjoyment purpose and the fact that this series is I don't know, 20 books long. It's a bunch of different small series put together, but they're all in the same world. Although I don't really remember the details of the plot and the story, I do remember enjoying it, and I think I gave it about 4 stars. But yes, like I said, I'm not going to continue on with the series going forward. The next series I'm definitely going to be continuing on with is the Belladonna trilogy by Adeline Grace. I read this probably a couple weeks ago and absolutely loved it. I picked this up because it is a gothic fantasy series and I really wanted to get into the fall season feeling, and this definitely fulfilled that completely. This book was so good. Like, I am so surprised that the series is not bigger than it is. I mean, it is hyped right now, but I'm so surprised that it is not way bigger. Although this is technically a YA book, I feel like it could easily be an adult book. Easily. The writing style, the tone, the topics, everything about it could easily just flow right into adults. It is probably the most adult YA book I've ever read. So this book is about a young woman named Signa, and she has had a very unfortunate life where death literally follows her everywhere she goes. Everybody she's known and loved has died on her. Since her mother was a very wealthy heiress, when Signa comes to a certain age, she will be inheriting a lot of money. But until she reaches that certain age, she is basically shipped from family member to family member, and whoever houses her receives money for compensation for housing her. So people have motive for wanting to house her. But you know, the whole death thing. Things are looking up when Signa finally gets like adopted by, I can't remember, but basically now she's now living with like a family. I think it's like the sister of somebody or the cousin of somebody. So now she's living with this family, and she has high hopes that things are going to work out, that she's going to be able to get married in high society and things are going to be better, and she's got cousins her age. So things are really looking up for her. But when she arrives, not everything is what it seems, and this family is extremely troubled, and they are kind of recovering from the death of the mother, and she kind of finds herself thrust in this like murder mystery that is happening around this family. This book delivered so much on character development, mental health development, accepting who you are, found family, and just like the creepy element. It just delivered on the creepy atmosphere completely. And this is a romance, so there is a really like kind of cute romance that you don't expect in this. I really love this, and I'm very excited to pick up Foxglove, the sequel, very soon, like hopefully very soon. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. The reason why I took half a star off is because I found that the middle was a bit of a slog. So it wasn't quite 5, but honestly, I can see this book series becoming a 5-star series because it was that good. I recommend, like, if you're holding back because it has the YA like title, don't read it. It's so good. Really good. Now we are at the romantasy portion of this video, and the first romantasy book I would like to talk about is The House of Bane and Blood by Alexis L. Maynard. This is the first book in a duology on KU, and I believe it is planned to be a series of duologies or trilogies that are in this connected world. And man, this world is so cool. So this book really reminded me of 3 things: Avatar: The Last Airbender, Six of Crows, and Peaky Blinders. So this world is very much like Peaky Blinders, where it's like pre-industrial revolution in almost like an England kind of setting, but it's not England. And each neighborhood in these cities is run by like a house, like a powerful house. So we're following one character from one house, very dominant, prestigious house that gets involved with like almost like a gangster house. They have a very, very bad past. Like the 2 houses hate each other. I'm not going to say why these houses hate each other, but there is a good reason. We're following Camilla, and she somehow found herself being the heir of her house, even though she has older brothers. So she's kind of like in this weird situation where her older brother is basically trying to sell her off and marry her so he can kind of like push her off into another house, but still kind of maintain his house and manage his house. Camilla wants to please her family, and she wants to do the best for her house as well. So she kind of like agrees to do this. But then something happens, and a twist of fate happens, and she finds herself married to a different person, and that is Gideon. Gideon is a very troubled young man, but he also has somehow maintained a really good heart and really loves his family as well. So both characters are trying to do the best for their family by marrying this person that they're supposed to hate. So obviously this is an enemies to lovers romance, and I absolutely loved it. Plus, close proximity. The reason why this reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender is because of the magic system. A lot of people in the city, not everybody, but some people in the city have magical abilities, and a lot of them are elemental based magic abilities. Some are like blood magic abilities where they're almost like vampires and they have to drink each other's blood, or some are like mental magic abilities. So it's a lot of fun stuff happening in these pages. I gave this book 4.25 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star for me, but I really do enjoy it. And I'm excited to continue on with the sequel, and I'm going to be following this author and her series from now on because it is that good. So I do recommend this for anybody who's looking for like a darker romantic series with a really good enemies to lover trope. Like pure enemies to lover. Pure. The next 2 books I want to talk about I read via audio, and that is the first 2 books in the Zodiac Academy series by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Bellatini. This series is not for everybody. I'm going to say that flat out. It is not for everybody. It is kind of like an urban fantasy series, paranormal series, high fantasy series. It is about 2 twins that are living in our world, and they soon discover that they have magical abilities, and they are basically taken to this like magical school to basically learn how to use their magical abilities. And when they get there, they soon find out that they are what is called the heirs, and they are the lost heirs to this kingdom. But because the previous king was not liked, he was hated, the people have basically dispersed away from that royal family, and kind of 4 families have they're kind of like digging their claws in, trying to make sure that they are the next in line for the throne. So when the twins get to this new school, they soon discover that it is run by 4 heirs of these 4 families, and they're called the heirs. And these 4 guys make it very, very well known that they're not welcome, and they do everything in their power to get these girls to leave. Like, everything. Like, they bully these poor girls horribly. They humiliate them, they bully them, they like are just mean to them at all times. It's not a healthy way of dealing with an issue, for sure. These guys are obviously the most hottest, powerful guys in all of the school, and everybody likes them. And although the twins hate them, they find themselves attracted to them, and vice versa. So it is a very unhealthy, red flag waving series. Some of the stuff that happens in there is just like, eesh, like it's bad. But it is so addictive. And I'm not joking when I say this. This book series is so addictive. It's one of those series that is kind of like, you know it's bad for you, but you still like eating it like cake. It's like eating cake. So obviously I really enjoyed it. I'm not one of those people that's going to turn away from a book series because it has problematic issues in it, but I can totally understand if you are one of those people and this series is not for you. But if you don't mind problematic plot lines and characters, I think that you should honestly give this series a go because it is really, 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 really addictive. I gave the first book 3.5 stars, and I gave the second one, which I just finished like 2 days ago, 3.75. So the second one was better. The bullying was not as bad in the second one. Like the first book it's like very much in your face, but the second one, it gets a little bit better, and the girls kind of get like more of a grip on that world, and they start fighting back a bit. But I have to say, I hate how these books end. Like they are literally in the middle of a scene, and then, or like the scene ends and it's like, bam. Like you literally need to continue on, and the books do continue on like literally after the other one finishes. So it's not like a couple years later. No, it's like literally that next hour. So with that said, if you do plan to pick up this series and you do enjoy it, plan to binge read this series, because I think that's what I'm gonna have to do. Because yeah, the way that the last book ended, I'm like, but no. So anyways, and the last book that I want to talk about is probably going to ruffle a lot of feathers because I did not love this book, and that is The Songbird and the Stone Heart by Carissa Broadbent. I screw up her name every time. Carissa Broadbent. Okay, so here's the thing. This is the third book in the Queen of Naxx series, the continuation of The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and we're following a different character that was introduced in those books. So I have read this physically and I listened to the audiobook, and the way that this main character's name is spelled is M-I-S-C-H-E. Like that sounds like Mish, but the way that the audiobook narrator writes Misha, like there's no A, I guess H-E? Yeah, it's niche. So I probably have a very unpopular opinion of not loving The Serpent and Wings at Night. I feel like it's an okay book, but I feel like it's a little overrated. Although I do like the story, I felt like I never really connected with the characters. I felt like I kind of just didn't care what happened to them. And so I felt like maybe starting a new duology in the same world with a different character who I liked in the first one, I would really like this book. And at first I really did. But then this book just kept going and going and going. And then I'm like, there was not a lot that happened in the plot line. It was very much like a mental health journey book, which I'm okay with usually. I'm okay with that. But this one, I'm just like, I just kind of didn't care. I did like the interludes. There's interludes kind of talking about her past life and how she kind of got there. I liked that. And I did kind of like the look at zealot believers, like followers of like a religion or a god, and kind of like them coming out and realizing that maybe that god is not right or that religion is not right. I found that was very interesting. What I didn't like is Misha or whatever her name is. She was so annoying. Like the audiobook, I probably should have stopped the audiobook. That should have been a sign. But I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook narrator for her was just like, oh my God, she was just so infuriating. Like, I'm just like, shut up. So bubbly and so cutesy all the time, and always so funny and had the funniest comebacks. And I'm just like, I get it. The second thing is, this is very much like Grumpy and Sunshine, which normally I'm okay with. But this was so insta-lovey. And I'm not talking about like insta-lovey like, oh yeah, I kind of like you already. It's like insta-lovey like, I will die for you. And sometimes I like it, but this time I'm like, I don't really care. I didn't really care about the main guy because like his story was so familiar. Like his backstory was so familiar. You've seen it done in so many books. And so I kind of didn't really care about him or the relationship. The other comment I have to make is that there's two other characters like in this book, and I swear to God, I don't even know why they're there. Like there's no reason why these side characters should be there. None. Like zero, unless it's explained in the second book. But as of the first book, there's literally no reason for these two characters to be there other than to create tension. I really, really love the whole humans or fae or whatever they are. No, these are vampires. My God, they might as well be fae. I really do like, lower beings fighting against the gods that technically created them. I love that. I love fighting against the gods. So I do love that aspect, but I feel like it's done better in other series. So I only gave this book 3.5 stars. So depending on how the sequel is received, I may continue on, but as of right now, I think I'm DNFing this series. So that was my November wrap up. Please comment down below. Let me know what you read this month, if you've read any of the ones that I have read, if you're excited for any of these books. As always, you can find my socials down below, including my Discord, where it's like a buddy read Discord, and everybody is welcome to join. It's a lot of fun. And if you like this video, please think about liking and subscribing. It really helps my channel grow. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day. Bye!